The calm before the storm. The city thrived in its usual hum. Streetlights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows on cracked sidewalks as people hurried along their routines. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of car horns blended with the murmur of distant chatter. Life moved, as it always did, with an unspoken certainty that tomorrow would follow today. A woman in her 30s, Maya, rushed out of her apartment building, briefcase in hand. She paused at the curb, waiting for the bus, her mind already several steps ahead. Deadlines loomed, and her colleagues were counting on her. But there was something that nagged at her, a restlessness that had crept into her thoughts. The sky, a dull gray, felt heavier than usual. She shook the thought away and boarded the bus, her focus shifting back to her phone, trying to ignore the unease simmering beneath her calm exterior. Meanwhile, in a small, crowded apartment on the other side of town, an elderly couple, Frank and Evelyn, sat side by side at their worn kitchen table. Frank, in his faded sweater, fiddled with the old radio, hoping to catch the news. Evelyn, who had long since given up on trying to follow the modern technology, worked on a crossword puzzle, her mind clouded by the memory of her youth. Their world was smaller now, confined mostly to each other and the routine they had built over decades of marriage. Still, there were moments when Evelyn could see the flicker of uncertainty in Frank's eyes, especially now. There had been reports of blackouts, some small, some lasting for hours, and the worry of an uncertain future weighed heavily on them both. Across town, 17-year-old Luke tossed a basketball against the cracked pavement, his earbuds firmly in place, blocking out the noise of the world around him. The game on his phone paused mid-play as a strange hum vibrated through the air. It was brief but unmistakable, the kind of sound you couldn't quite place. He shrugged it off, dismissing it as nothing more than his imagination. He had bigger things to worry about. The upcoming game, the fight with his father over grades, and the constant pressure to perform. The brief sound, though, wasn't an illusion. In every corner of the city, there was a subtle undercurrent, a shared, unspoken tension. The hum was a harbinger, not of danger, but of something far more unsettling, the sudden collapse of everything they knew. The bus jolted to a stop, breaking Maya's reverie. She stepped off, glancing at her phone one last time, her mind already on the upcoming meeting. The hum, faint but persistent, echoed in the back of her mind, but she couldn't make sense of it. Her focus returned to the building in front of her. She needed to get inside. Frank adjusted his glasses and glanced out the window, as if waiting for something. Evelyn's pencil paused mid-stroke on her puzzle, an inexplicable unease filling the air. Luke felt it too, even if he couldn't put it into words. The world around him suddenly felt wrong, but none of them knew it yet. The calm, as they knew it, was about to be shattered. The blackout strikes. The world shifted in an instant. One moment, the city pulsed with life. The next, it was swallowed by silence. Maya's phone buzzed in her hand, then went dark. She glanced up, confusion knitting her brow. The streetlights blinked once, twice, and then vanished into nothingness. Her heart skipped a beat. Around her, the world seemed to freeze. People in the crowd paused mid-step, their faces illuminated only by the dim glow of emergency lights that flickered on and off, casting eerie shadows on their expressions. The hum she had heard earlier, that strange, unnerving sound, was gone now, replaced by an oppressive stillness. Maya stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Her thoughts scrambled, but the silence only deepened the panic creeping up her spine. No lights, no traffic signals, just the distant sound of murmured voices rising into uneasy questions. In the apartment of Frank and Evelyn, the same stillness enveloped their small world. Frank's hand trembled as he turned the dial on the radio once more. Static filled the air, and Evelyn's fingers stiffened on her crossword puzzle. The peaceful hum of their evening was gone, replaced by a growing tension neither could ignore. They looked at each other, silent and waiting. "It's happening again," Frank muttered, his voice low and shaky. Evelyn's eyes softened with understanding, but the worry was still there. This wasn't just another fleeting power outage. This felt different, larger, more ominous. Her mind raced through the old stories of darkness, of people lost in the unknown. Meanwhile, Luke stood at the edge of the basketball court, his breath catching in his throat. The streetlights above him flickered once before plunging into darkness. His phone, his lifeline to the world, went black. His first thought was simple. No way. It's just the power. But even as he reassured himself, the quiet grew heavier, more suffocating. He looked around. The other teenagers who had been playing moments ago were now standing still, staring at each other with confusion and fear. Their phones, like his, were useless, their screens glowing empty in the darkness. He wasn't sure what was worse, the power being out, or the way the city seemed to hold its breath, like everyone was waiting for something they couldn't see. Maya, suddenly aware of the chaos unfolding around her, began to move quickly. People were looking at each other, their faces filled with uncertainty. Cars were stalled in the middle of intersections, their engines dead. Pedestrians glanced nervously at each other, unsure of what to do. The familiar rhythm of the city had been broken, and now they were all caught in a moment of hesitation, unsure of the next step. "Maya!" A voice broke through the tension. It was her co-worker, Hannah, running up to her, face pale and frantic. "What's happening? Is it just the power?" Before Maya could answer, a car engine roared to life, and then another, but it was chaotic, stuttering like a machine struggling to find its footing. The panic was setting in now. She could feel it. The uncertainty, the creeping dread. The city wasn't just facing a power outage. Something far worse had begun. In the distance, sirens began to wail, their sound muffled by the unnatural quiet. Maya looked down the street, her mind racing. Something was very wrong. Something that went far beyond the simple failure of power. The blackout had only just begun. The struggle for survival. As the hours dragged on, the city transformed. What had once been a hub of activity now felt like a lifeless wasteland. The sounds of everyday life, car engines, people talking, the distant hum of technology, had evaporated. In their place, there was only the eerie stillness, punctuated by the occasional shouts or hurried footsteps. Maya moved through the streets, her mind racing. She clutched her bag tightly, her grip only loosening when she checked her phone again, futilely pressing the power button. It was dead. She didn't know whether to feel more frustrated or terrified. The city was descending into chaos, and she didn't know how to navigate it. The office building where she worked, a gleaming tower just hours ago, now sat dark and hollow, a shell of what it had been. People were gathering, speaking in hushed tones about the possibility of looting, about not being able to reach loved ones. Maya found herself drawn to a group huddled outside a small convenience store, the window fogged from the heat of the bodies pressing close. "We need to find food," someone shouted. "Water, too." Maya's heart sank. She had enough for herself, barely, but she couldn't help but wonder how long it would last. More than that, she wondered how long she could stay calm. She needed to find her brother. He was the one person who could keep her grounded, and she hadn't heard from him since the power cut out. With a final glance at the store's locked door, she set off again, her steps quicker now, propelled by urgency. Meanwhile, Frank and Evelyn's small apartment had become a sanctuary for others. Neighbors knocked, seeking refuge, searching for information that no one had. The elderly couple had become unintentional leaders, their decades of life experience providing a calm, steady presence in the face of rising panic. But even they couldn't escape the growing anxiety. Evelyn paced by the window, her hands wringing together. She tried to steady her breath, but it was impossible. Frank's old, rusted radio sat silent on the table, and the apartment felt smaller now, the walls pressing in. "Do you think this will end soon?" Evelyn asked, though she already knew the answer. The question wasn't for Frank. It was for herself, for reassurance that this wouldn't spiral into something far worse. Frank didn't answer right away, and the silence stretched. "I don't think it's going to end anytime soon," he said quietly. "We need to be ready. People are going to get desperate." The words hung heavy between them. They both knew what he meant. Desperation bred recklessness. And though their apartment felt like a haven, it could become a target if people began to lose control. At the basketball court, Luke felt the tension in the air like a physical force. The other teenagers, once joking around, now stood in uneasy clusters, casting glances toward the empty streets, their voices barely audible. A shadow of doubt began to creep into Luke's mind. The simple thrill of the game was gone now, replaced by something darker, more unsettling. A woman's scream sliced through the air, distant but unmistakable, and for a moment, everything stilled. Without thinking, Luke turned, his heart pounding. People were starting to run, their faces lit by the flickering streetlights. And then, the realization hit. This wasn't just a temporary blackout. This was the beginning of something much bigger. Luke swallowed hard. His body was frozen, torn between the urge to run, to escape, and the need to protect his family. His phone, his link to the outside world, was still useless. There were no answers, just the quiet and the mounting sense of panic. The struggle for survival had already begun. A new beginning. The power flickered back to life hours later. But the world that returned was not the one they had left behind. The city, once alive with motion and noise, was now a shadow of itself. The streets were littered with debris, the remnants